What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down 3 tips for beginner wide receivers to be a successful route runner, to be a successful wide receiver overall. So I hope this video helps you guys out. We're going to talk about how you guys can get more separation off the line of scrimmage against a physical press DB, how you guys can get separation at the top of the route, and just how you can be a better overall wide receiver. So I hope, again, this helps you out. But also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you want to get some work in with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, we are going to be traveling out to 3 more locations this year for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. So next up on our list, we're going to be coming out to Nashville, Tennessee. Then we'll be heading out to Salt Lake City, Utah. And then we'll be coming out to Los Angeles, California, all in the month of July, fellas. So if you're local to one of those cities or would like to travel out and get some work in with us, we'd love to have some of our YouTube community out to one of those camps. We really appreciate all your guys' support. So check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get started with this video. So now, first things first, we're going to be looking at a bad example of a route, and then we're going to be looking at a good example of a route. So if you're a beginner wide receiver, there are a couple things you got to know. Number one is that your pad level and your body language is the sole thing that a DB is going to be reading, and that is the sole thing that will get you some separation. There are some other things that tie into it that we'll talk about throughout this video. So when you guys are going up into a break, like whether you're running a 5-yard hitch, whether you're running a 15-yard comeback, you need to make sure that there is no change in your pad level. And by pad level, I mean like your upper half, like above your waist. So this wide receiver is running a 5-yard hitch against inside shade press. Inside shade is when that DB's lined up pretty much just shaded to the inside. The middle of his body is even with your front foot. That's how you know that he's inside shade. So if you're running a 5-yard hitch against this look, you would want to push vertical super hard at his outside shoulder, get him to flip his hips, you snap down and come back to that ball, or the ball's just going to already be there. So what this wide receiver does, he does exactly that. Gives a quick little speed release inside, he attacks to the outside, this DB's hip to hip with him, but right before the break point, you see how that 83 pops up. He's in a low pad level position right here, and he pops up. And look where this DB is looking at. He's reading our body language. So as soon as he sees a change in my body language, it starts to see me raise up, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to settle down. Because on every single route, fellas, if you are new to playing this position, you got to be thinking about one thing, and that is selling vertical. On your routes, no matter what it is, like I said, 5-yard hitch to 15-yard comeback, you need to be focused on selling that 9. Make the DB think you're doing something else, or make the DB think you're doing something, then do something else. That is the name of the game, but we cannot give something called an indicator, which is a raise of that pad level. So let's play this thing full speed, and then we're going to show a good example of like a deeper stop curl route with the same type of coverage. So inside shade, he's going to be running like kind of like a 12 back to 10-yard curl, but you would do the exact same thing. If it was a 5-yard hitch, you'd push vertical to 5. If it was a 12-yard curl, you push vertical to 12. It's the same exact thing. Now, the one thing about this wide receiver's break is that there's no raise. There's no change of the pad level. He doesn't pop his chest up. He doesn't start to change his speed, which we'll get into later and how you guys can use your speed to your advantage as a wide receiver in the next 2 clips we show. But for right now, let's play this thing full speed. So he comes off, attacks outside shoulder, no change in the pad level. The hip drop is what gets him out of the break. So what do I mean by that? This position right here, fellas, everything about this looks like a fade when it comes to his body language. Now, a lot of wide receivers can have good body language, but they run slow or they take choppy steps. And like I said, we're going to get into that in the next 2 examples we show. But main thing right here that I want you guys to understand is his body language. There is no change in his pad level. It is the same pad level. You cannot see that number 3 from the front of his jersey if you were standing back here. His pad level is at like a slight 45, and he is keeping that selling vertical position. Now, this is much easier said than done. A lot of people will say, oh, I'm selling vertical, coach. I can't get any separation. But are you really selling vertical? Because a lot of people think they are, but then when it comes to changing direction, that's where they falter. So if you're running a route like a hitch, like a curl, like a comeback, at that break point, you have to do something called snap down. And that is essentially that like quick, sudden drop of your hips. So when you guys are selling vertical, the whole point of this snap down is so you guys can change direction on a dime. The old school way that, and you'll probably hear receiver coaches say this for the time until they're blue in the face. Oh, you want to beat the drum. You get to this break point, you want to chop your feet, chop your hands, do as many steps as possible almost, because that'll help you slow down. And it will, but it takes too much damn time. How you guys can get out of a break efficiently while selling vertical in a good pad level and actually running hard, selling that 9 route, is by snapping down. When you have that quick, sudden drop of your hips like so, that will bring you to balance faster. That explosive position right there allows you to change direction when you are running full speed. If you're running half speed, it don't matter. You could just take a step and get out of it. But when you're running hard, the only way you make that cut is by bringing that chin to your knee. Treat it like somebody's got this string and they're pulling a string straight down. Or another way that I like to say it is you got like a soda can and somebody's crushing the can. Your whole body level, your whole pad level wants to snap down so you can put the brakes on, make a tight cut, and have some speed into the tight cut so you could have some speed out of the break. So that is the key, fellas. That pad level and that vertical snap is how you guys will get separation to start. Now we're going to be talking about the speed portion of it. Because remember, DB is reading your body language. Any change in your body language until that break point will get you locked up. Okay, so now, this situation here, this is going to be talking about your guys' stride. So the second thing for beginner wide receivers that you have to understand is that your stride length is everything. There's a popular clip that was going around maybe about a month ago of Justin Jefferson at some Under Armour camp, and he was talking about this, where receivers will go up into a break, and let's say the break's at like 10 yards, right? And they will go all the way up, and then at about 8 yards, they shorten their stride, they take all these choppy steps, then they break. But those choppy steps, just like that change in your pad level, is an indicator. So remember this. Where was the DB supposed to be watching? He was supposed to be looking at your hips, right? He's supposed to be reading your body language. But also, a DB's not an idiot. He's also going to be reading your speed. If you're not running hard, if you're not selling the fade with your speed and with your stride, he ain't going to move. So let's talk about this situation and how that applies. We got inside shade. This is off man. So off man is when he's like maybe like 6 to 10 yards off, and he's still in man coverage. So he's going to be running this like 10-yard dig, or like for those of you that are unfamiliar, maybe like a 10-yard in. So what you have to do in this case is you have to attack his outside shoulder. You got to go right at his outside shoulder, make him think you're running a fade, so he will open up and you could slip underneath him. But if you guys start to slow down and you guys start to raise your pad level or maybe change your speed, this DB is going to sit on it because he is expecting a break when you change up the speed. So that's what this wide receiver does. Play this thing again full speed. So he comes at him here, running up, starts to chatter his feet, break down, beat the drum like we were talking about, and he's locked up. You can see at the last end of this, the clip, the ball flies over his head. That was not a completion. I know it cuts off, fellas. But as soon as you see him start to go here and start to chop his stride down before that break point, all that does is get this DB to stop. So now I'm going to play this full speed, and then we're going to show a good example of this and how this next receiver doesn't shorten his stride, doesn't start to chop down, and actually runs full speed. So now, here we go. Inside shade, he's got to run this like 10 to 12 yard in. One thing I want to say, though, is because if you're maybe, not the biggest beginner in the world, maybe you are somewhat familiar with the wide receiver position, but you're still fairly new. Some of you may have heard the phrase, you want to attack his leverage, right? So this right now, this DB's inside leverage. He's shaded inside, so that means that he has inside leverage on you. So a lot of people will say, oh, when he's inside leverage and you got to run that dig, oh, that's wrong. You don't want to attack the outside shoulder. You want to attack his leverage. You want to try to square him up and step on his toes. The only problem with that is that's good on an outside breaking route, but if you have to run an inside breaking route and you go attack this guy's leverage, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to keep his leverage. Because if you guys attack him and he's inside shade in the first place, the whole reason he's lined up there is because he doesn't want to give up the inside route. He does not want to give up a post. He does not want to let you run a dig. So if you guys attack him, what do you think he's going to do? He's not just going to let you run in front of him. He's going to keep his leverage to the inside. He's going to weave, as they call it. So you'd start to attack him, he'd weave inside, and you can't just change the route, so you'd end up running the route right into him. So attacking leverage is not the answer here. If you have a receiver coach tell you to stem this guy in this situation, that is incorrect. You don't want to do that. You want to attack his outside shoulder, make it look like that fade like we were talking about, so he will open up and we could slip under. So this is a good example of that. So this wide receiver comes out, no change in stride, no change in pad level, gets the DB to flip his hips. And this is a talented DB. This is Richard Sherman. This is not a scrub DB right here. And again, I show you these clips of bad examples and good examples so you guys can understand, because there's such a big difference, and it is noticeable, fellas. It is so noticeable when you go to these camps, showcases. You can notice who knows how to run routes and who doesn't know how to run routes. And it comes down to this stuff. It comes down to knowing what to do, knowing how to self-fade, and knowing how to efficiently get out of the route. So when he comes up here, let's watch it. Let's look at his pad level. No change in pad level. Let's look at his stride. No really change in stride leading up into this thing. It's the exact same. Picture frame off the line, picture frame at the top. It's the exact same thing because this DB has to eventually honor that fade. And if you could get him to honor that fade, flip his hips, you can get some space, be able to slip back underneath even with a slight hold and win on this route. That is textbook right there. So fellas, beginner wide receivers, you got to focus on three things. You got to focus on body language. Don't raise your pad level up. Number two, you got to focus on keeping the same stride into a break because when you shorten down to slow down, that DB also slows down. And then last but not least, you got to break with as little time possible at the top of the route. Do not waste time. Do not beat the drum. Do not chop your feet. Let's get in and let's get out with the ability to self-fade. Let's play this thing again full speed. Great job by this wide receiver attacking outside shoulder, flipping his hips, and then winning on this route over the middle. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. And we always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys as usual, fellas. And again, if you'd like to come out, get some work in with us this year, we're traveling out to 3 more locations for the remainder of this summer. We're coming out to Nashville, Salt Lake City, and Los Angeles. So check out that very first link in the description below, you guys. We'd love to have you out. I'll see you guys next time.